When I was 9 years old, I learned not to cry, not because I was strong, but because there was no one to cry to. Mom was asleep, or not home, or she was home, but it was as if she wasn't. When I was 29, I signed my first $1 million contract. My hands didn't shake. I smiled at my partner, shook his hand, walked out into the hallway, and only there did I let myself exhale. That's the whole secret to success that I have. The story of a girl no one promised things would get better. I grew up in a 2-room apartment in a prefab building. There were 3 of us: Mom, Grandma, and me. There was no dad. Not because he died. He just left when I was 2. I don't remember his face. Only the smell of cigarettes on his jacket, which hung in the hallway for a long time after. Morning looked like this. I get up by myself. I make my own sandwich. Bread and butter, if there's butter. Sometimes just bread. I pack my own school bag. Mom is asleep. She worked double shifts, or didn't work at all, depending on the period. I learned not to wake her. I learned to be quiet. At school, I was that girl in the worn-out uniform. Kids sense poverty. I don't know how, but they sense it. I wasn't bullied outright. I just wasn't invited. Not to birthdays, not to hang out after school. I was like furniture, present, but unnoticed. The only place I felt good was the library. It was warm there. It smelled of books. And nobody looked at my jacket there. For a long time, I didn't know how to talk about my mom, because I loved her, and because she hurt me. Both of these things are true at the same time. And that's the hardest thing I've come to understand about my childhood. Mom wasn't cruel. She was broken. She grew up without a father herself. Never learned how to build a life. She drank. Not every day, but enough. In good periods, she was tender, funny. She sang me songs and bought me ice cream. In bad ones, she disappeared inside herself, and there was no reaching her. I was 11. Winter. I came home from school. No one there. Not Mom, not Grandma. Grandma was already sick by then. I waited until 10 at night. Then I went to bed alone. Mom came home toward morning. I heard her open the door. I pretended to be asleep. She looked into my room, stood in the doorway for a moment, then left. I lay there thinking, when I grow up, I will always have food in the fridge. That was the dream at 11 years old. Food in the fridge. Grandma Nina was the only stable person in my life. Small, tough, with hands knotted from arthritis. She worked her whole life and didn't know any other way. She never said, "I love you." She said, "Eat, study, don't cry." She's the one who took me to the library. She's the one who checked my homework. Slowly, syllable by syllable, because she herself read poorly. She's the one who told me once, when I was about 12, a phrase I still remember. "Masha, we have no money. We have no connections. We have nothing. So you need to have a good head on your shoulders. No one can take that away." She died when I was 14. A stroke. Fast. I didn't get to say goodbye. I was at school. It was the first loss of my life. And it taught me the most important thing. Don't put off what matters until later. At 14 or 15, kids from families like mine usually have 2 paths. The first is to repeat the pattern. Start drinking, running around, giving up on school. Because why try if nothing's going to work out anyway? The second is to dig in. I chose the second. Not because I was special, but because Grandma's voice in my head was louder than everything else. I started studying as if it were the only way out, because it was the only way out. I took extra books. I stayed after class with teachers. One teacher, Elena Sergeyevna, math, noticed me. For the first time in my life, someone told me, "You have talent. Don't waste it." I didn't know how to take a compliment. I burst into tears right there in class. She pretended not to notice. I'm still grateful to her for that. At 16, I started working odd jobs, handing out flyers, mopping floors in a supermarket on weekends. I brought my first paycheck, 80 rubles, home and put it in the fridge, under a magnet. Mom found it and cried. I didn't know why, probably from shame. We both pretended nothing had happened. I got into university on a state-funded spot, the first person in my family to ever go to university. Mom was sober that day. On purpose, I think. She hugged me and said, "Well done. Just, well done." But I still remember that word. Scene. First day. University was a different world. There were kids whose parents paid for apartments, for courses, for tutors. They talked about trips to Europe like it was nothing special. I saw someone with a MacBook for the first time and didn't know what it was. I was that girl in the worn-out uniform again. Only now it wasn't the schoolyard. It was the student cafeteria. But something had changed. I was older, and I knew that shame is a bad compass. That if you let it steer, it will take you right back to that 2-room apartment. So I did the following. I stopped hiding where I came from. I just stopped thinking about it. I thought about where I was going instead. In my second year, I failed my exams. Not all of them. 2. For a lot of people, that's nothing. For me, it was a catastrophe. I could have lost my funded spot. I remember that night, sitting in the dorm, no money, the retake in 3 days, and thinking, maybe that's it? Maybe this is a sign it's not for me? Then I remembered Grandma. No one can take your head away. I got up, opened the textbook, passed the retake with a B. After university, I got a job as a manager at a small company. The pay was pennies, but I watched how everything worked from the inside. I asked questions others considered out of place. I stayed late, not because I was a workaholic, but because I was curious, and because there wasn't really anywhere else to go. 2 years in, I realized, what our company does, I could do myself. Better, cheaper. For the clients they overlooked. Small businesses, small shops, local producers. They all needed marketing but couldn't afford a big agency. I registered as a sole proprietor at 25, starting capital, 0 rubles. My first office was the kitchen table in a rented studio apartment. My first client was an acquaintance who gave me a chance, not because he believed in me, but because I was cheaper. The first year I worked 18-hour days, not out of love for the work, out of fear. Fear was my fuel. I wasn't afraid of going back to Mom or to that apartment. I was afraid of going back to the feeling that I had no choice. I turned that fear into energy. That's probably the most important thing my childhood taught me. I have to talk about this too, because success stories usually stop at the moment everything works out. I want to tell you what was happening inside. On relationships, I found it hard to be with people. I never learned to ask for help. As a kid, there was no one to ask, and I lost the habit. I never learned to trust. Too many times the people who should have been there let me down. My first relationships fell apart because I built walls faster than anyone could get close. When I turned 27, Mom ended up in the hospital. Liver failure. I came, sat beside her. She held my hand and said, "Forgive me." I didn't know what to say. I forgave her. Not because it stopped hurting, but because I understood. She gave me everything she had. It wasn't enough, but it was all she had. On the inner voice. Even now, sometimes, I wake up at night with the thought, what if it all collapses? What if I end up back at 0? My therapist says this is normal for people with my kind of childhood. It's called hypervigilance or hypercontrol. I'm working on it. Slowly. What becoming a businesswoman actually means. People think success means arriving in a nice car with a beautiful office. For me, success looks different. The first time I bought my mom a refrigerator, new, big, with a freezer, I brought it, set it up. She stood next to it and said nothing. Then she said, "Why so big?" I said, "So there's always something to eat." She understood. We both understood what that meant. The first time an employee came to me and said, "Masha, I'm pregnant. I'm scared of losing my job." And I said, "You won't lose your job." And that was true. Because I remember what it's like to have no one to rely on. I don't want to be that kind of employer. The first time I took on an intern, a girl from an orphanage, smart, angry from fear, with the same walls I once had, I recognized her instantly. Now she's my best project manager. I want to say something to that girl who made a sandwich out of bread and butter and walked to school alone, who sat in the library because it was warm there. You are not broken. What's happening around you is not you. It's circumstances. And circumstances change. Grandma was right. No one can take your head away. Study. Not for grades. For yourself. Every piece of knowledge is a brick you're laying in the wall between yourself and what you're afraid of. It will hurt. There will be people who don't believe in you. There will be moments when you don't believe in yourself. In those moments, just take the next step. 1. Not the whole path. Just one step. And when things are good, don't forget where you came from. Not so you can suffer over it, but so you remember who to reach a hand out to. Finale, addressed to the viewer. If you are that girl right now, or that boy, from a difficult family, if you think your starting point determines your finish line, I want you to know, no. The start only determines the start. The path, that's you. Pause. Write one word in the comments, whatever you're feeling right now. Just one word. I read every one. Text on screen. You don't have to repeat what you grew up in. You can be the first in your family to choose differently. Subscribe and give a like so you don't miss new real-life stories.